Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Arsenault. On this episode, we have Kendall Taylor of Root Architecture. We'll be talking about Kendall's 10-year anniversary of starting his own firm, his experience working on the Green Gables Visitor Centre in Prince Edward Island, many other milestone projects throughout the Atlantic provinces, and more. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. Very excited to have with us today Kendall Taylor from Root Architecture. Thanks for being here, Kendall.
Thank you for having me.
Your 10-year anniversary with Root Architecture.
It's been a lifelong journey. I was very lucky as a kid. I had a father who was sort of a self-taught cabinet maker and a grandfather who was a carpenter, and my other grandfather was a jack of all trades. So I learned how to hammer and saw when I was old enough to hold them in my hand and be of some help to somebody. And when I turned about 14, I knew I wanted to get in the construction business, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try this architecture thing and see how that goes. And I went to St. Mary's and took general sciences. Then I went into engineering as a fallback, and then I made it into architecture, and I graduated in '85 at 23 years old, and very young, which is good and also sometimes challenging because you need to be very mature and know yourself really well as a person to excel in the business. It's a very subjective, but
You were one of the first architects in Atlantic Canada to become LEED accredited. Is that right?
Yeah, I was lucky back in 2001. I worked on a project at BIO, and they're very interested in sustainability. And so we started doing research and developed a project with the first green roof of its kind in Canada, actually, at the Energy Centre. And it was a seawater cooling plant, so it was kind of cool that way. And then we put in some PV panels. There were hardly anybody who could supply them then. So that kind of got me thinking about LEED and things that were starting to emerge out of the U.S. around that time. And so myself and a bunch of fellow architects and people in the industry that were keen on it, we started the Atlantic Chapter of the CAGBC, and then I became LEED accredited. And then 2004, I put my name into the arena to be on the first national board of directors. So I sat on that for 4 years, and it was just an amazing experience. Some amazing people.
Give us a little background on the Canadian Green Building Council and what it is and how it...
Yeah, so it emerged out of the U.S. There's 3 or 4 noted people that sort of founded the U.S. Green Building Council, and several of the founders of the Canada Green Building Council were very connected to that. And they, there's 4 or 5 people at the time, Kevin Hides, Peter Busby, a few others, started the Canada Green Building Council with the help of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada, and Vivian Manask is another person. So they were sort of the groundbreaking people that started getting it going in the country, and it started really in 2003, 2004, and it was in 2004 that it started to get some traction across the country. Yeah.
I wonder if you could give us some perspective on just the timeline, seeing as that's something you were involved in from the start, 25, 30 years ago, and now the way things are now with sustainability kind of being at the forefront more. Like, what have you noticed most about the shift and the change in the last 20 years?
Well, it's been amazing, and yet it's still a long way to go. I mean, in the beginning, we had set some goals that we thought we could achieve by 2015, and well, that's 6 years ago, and we still haven't achieved them. But you kind of have to put things out in front of you and chase them to do things. And the challenge was in this market, in Atlantic Canada, working here, most of our projects are relatively small. We have a lot of levels of government and policy changes that need to be implemented, as opposed to a big city like Toronto or Vancouver, where you have one mayor, one council type of thing. So getting the traction in this region was hard. It's geographically the most complicated place in North America.
Climate-wise?
Well, it's just, to get to parts of this region are very complex. and time consuming, and we don't have a mass of people in one area. So trying to transform this market has been challenging. We don't have a manufacturing base here like other parts of North America. So a lot of challenges, but when I started my project at BIO, I had to source the PV panels from Germany. There was nobody that could do that in Canada at the time. And now you could go to any industrial park in Atlantic Canada and find several suppliers that would be more than happy to sell them to you. So
for our listeners that don't know, that's photovoltaic is a roof.
Yeah. So the photovoltaic panels. Sorry, the acronyms just creep in everywhere.
I know, right? So many acronyms.
Yeah. But everything's been definitely going in the right direction. I mean, having the past president in the United States hasn't helped progress, but we had a similar problem when we started, that the government of Canada wasn't supporting us like they used to, and we were worried about it. We had a backup. We were working on a backup plan, but the CAGBC originally, when it started, was growing at a rate of 10% per month, despite the fact the federal government pulled the funding. And when the Liberals came back in power, they put the funding back in place again and support again. So it's gained more traction. I'm not as involved in it as I was in the early years. Just my practice has just kind of made me focus more on my business than that. But I spent 10 years volunteering, both locally and at the national level.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've won some awards over the years, and with your business, with Root Architecture as well.
Yeah.
And those were awards that you were nominated by your peers, and maybe tell us about a few of those. I know those are really exciting milestones for you.
Yeah, one of the greatest ones that as architects, most architects like to design their own homes. I was very fortunate to do that, and I won an award of merit for that in 1999. And still live there. Plan on living there for as long as I can. And then won a few awards for different firms I work with over the years, and with teams that I worked on some really exciting projects at Dalhousie. The air traffic control tower was really quite a project. And just recently, since we started our business, the Green Gables project has gotten some good traction. Unfortunately, with COVID, a lot of the awards programs have been put in stall mode. Right. But hopefully, as this year unfolds, maybe we'll get lucky. I was very flattered and humbled by being given the 2019 Architect of the Year award from the Atlantic Woodworks Group. It was quite an experience. I was in a room full of people I had a lot of admiration for, and walking around the room and seeing all the projects that were there, and people are working with wood in this region. There's a lot of talent in Atlantic Canada. I was quite taken by some of the quality of the designs throughout the region. While we were there, they had quite a nice exhibit, and just recently we got a Canada Wood Council award. We're still that's just fresh off the plate. That was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that's nice, and it's great. It makes all of the
all the hard work.
There's a lot of work that goes into running a business, and you got to do a lot of difficult, utilitarian projects before you get one that's a little more glamorous sometimes. But they're the ones that help you, thrive. When you do get a good design project, you say, well, you know what, I can spend some time on this and make it worth something.
Yeah. When those ones come around, it really must get your passion for the.
Yeah, I remember the day that we were awarded the Green Gables project. It was a Thursday. I was going away for a 4-day weekend in August, and I had just been rejected on 2 small RFPs that morning, and I was like, that's not so great, but we'll get by. And I got this email from the Public Works saying, the project manager will be reaching out to you next week to discuss the startup for the Green Gables Visitor Centre. And I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, it wasn't like the reaction I had
Like a
to
kid
the
at
email,
Christmas.
the email was just another email to the person who sent it, but
Yeah.
to me it was like, holy. And from that moment on, it was just exciting, and to have been involved in that project. And
So this is located in Prince Edward Island.
yeah, in Cavendish, and one of the author of Anne of Green Gables books, Lucy Maud Montgomery's sayings, if I can quote it correctly here, is it's delightful when your imaginations come true, isn't it? And it was her talking about her book, and it's written on one of the fences there, and it just resonates so well with an architect to see your buildings being created. And the people that ran the facility had such amazing things to say when at grand opening. It was just really nice. It's if I never get a chance to design a building of that order of magnitude again, at least I'll always know that that had some contribution to that one.
Tell us a little bit about the specific building, the Green Gables, and the design and things that stand out to you after.
So it started out, we had a big design charrette, and it was held in Charlottetown with all different levels of public works in Parks Canada. And it was originally set out to be a 3-phase project because there was an existing visitor center that was old, and it didn't do its job well. It was built in 1998. And so the first phase was to add on to the old barn. So what we did is we started with, we sort of pulled a little bit of contemporary architecture into the north side of the barn. We're not allowed to touch the south side. That's very historical. And so we pulled a few modern elements into that. And then when we got into phase 2, which is the main building, it's about 12,000 square feet. The overall budget of the project was around 11 million. It primarily had the visitor center. The main purpose of it was to start to showcase the author. Everybody goes to see the aura of Anne and who Anne of Green Gables means to people from all over the world. But the author was the main focus of the exhibit center, was to tell that story. And so there's 3 different zones in the exhibit hall, and that's sort of the main focus of the building. Plus, we created a very large lobby space to allow people to gather and collect. People travel from China, Japan, and this is one of their stops. It's on their route. They can arrive there. Sometimes there's 500 people land there at that site at once. 12 buses, 12 to 18 buses can be accommodated now. And they have 45 minutes to 90 minutes to be on site, and they got to go again.
Yeah.
So we had a scenario that we planned the building out for they call them the stayers, the streakers, and the strollers. And the streakers are the people that don't want to read anything. They just want to go right to the house, get through the house, and go have an ice cream. The strollers are people that might meander through the exhibit, but they don't read anything. And then the stayers, they read everything. And so we had to really think about how people move through the building that way and go through. The other challenge we had was the biggest building on site was the barn at 600 square feet. And we had to build a 12,000 square foot building. And so we studied local architecture there, vernacular architecture. They were looking for a modern contemporary building, but we needed to really make sure that when you walk up to the building, you don't sense that this building is a monster on a site. It needs to fit in. So we were very respectful of the building forms.
Sorry, Kendall.
It fit really well into my past and my history, because as a young kid, I used to spend time at my grandparents, and I was in the barns every weekend when I was around 10 years old.
Was that here in Nova Scotia? Was that in PEI?
As a Muscatabat Valley in Dean Settlement.
Yeah.
So to go
you were
there,
drawing from your childhood.
Oh, it was like, okay, I can get into this really easy. It was very natural for me to be being inspired by barn structures and the simplicity and the beauty of them. And so we built on that, and then as we were working along, we kind of migrated from a conventional barn structure into a post and beam frame, which went really well. It was, a full natural, sort of an old school post and beam. And then we moved into the mass timber on phase 2 and sort of eventually making one step away from the past, but still respectful of the architecture and connecting it all together. And
So the Green Gables project must have been part of your winning the Atlantic Woodworks.
oh yeah,
That
yeah,
was the-
it's got some elements and features that's really good for the industry. The nail laminated timbers is so simple. It's just basically 2x4s on their side, nailed together. They're engineered. They come in components like they were 14 feet wide and maybe 6 by 14, and put in place by crane. Very simple technology. You can use 2x6, 2x8, 2x10. You can span a long ways with these, and they're such simple structures, yet they're so beautiful in the end. Yeah. So no, it's.
There's a hip roof there too. Right?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a flat roof that kind of pulls it all together. There's a clear story at the center with the tree structure in the middle, and then there's a few roofs that pop up just to kind of break the mass down. Yeah, create some interest inside.
Well, it's amazing to to hear you talk about that project. Obviously, a lot went into it. Seems like it was meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's really great, when we finished phase 2, we had a grand opening. There was a princess from Japan arrived, and a lot of fanfare there. And we ended up, myself and the project team from Parks Canada and Public Works, we went out and had dinner and a couple of beverages. and that in itself is a nice ending, I guess, to say to a project, in that people are still quite working together, and we created relationships, and I think that's a reward in itself, to end a project and still
celebrate like that.
Yeah, to not only accomplish something together. We never knew each other before this project, and yet we became friends, and that, I'm very proud of that too. I think that's that. I like the awards, but I'm pretty proud that we're still, pretty friends, and great respect for each other too.
And you're working so closely with these people on these massive projects. That take so much attention to detail.
Yeah, and to become an advocate for a client and someone that they can count on to tell them what they need to hear and tell it to them the right way, and be honest and hardworking and dedicated. That's a great reward. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Other than Green Gables, is there? I know you mentioned the air traffic control tower, Halifax International Airport. Is that right? Is there any other projects sort of like that kind of stand out recently or in the past that kind of?
Well, I think
either good or bad, maybe.
Yeah. Well, there's in this market. I mean, you have to get roll up your sleeves and get involved in all kinds of scales of projects. It's you just can't survive in this market as a specialty. People ask me that all the time, and I say absolutely nothing. I don't specialize in anything intentionally, because if you're...
It's not Europe, it's Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, well, if you're in a bigger market and you have a passion for healthcare, or you have a passion for opera houses or something, you can work from that. But in this market, I think you can't specialize in building types here without having a broader client base. You have to move beyond the borders of this region. So there's lots of projects. I found when I used to work with Leiden Lynch, and we worked on the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at Dalhousie with Diamond Schmidt. I was about 15 years into my career at that point. I was feeling a bit stale. And that project just made me realize what's possible when I worked with the firms at the time. And it went on to win an Award of Excellence through the Architects Association. And it just reminded me why I got into this business and why I'm going to continue working on it. It was kind of a turning point. It was a refresh. It was a nice time to reflect on that. And it's a great addition to the Dalhousie campus. I've worked on a few projects at St. FX as well. The Governor's Hall was an interesting study of historicism. replicating the past is sort of the culture there, and it was an interesting project. It went up being design build, and there's a lot of different projects like that over my career. That the air traffic control tower, we used to say, it was like building a Swiss watch. It was amazing what we had to fit into this building, and the upper two floors were above and beyond the building code. The building code didn't matter on those two floors. It was air safety that mattered. And the way in which the tower was built, and the glass is like 800 pounds each piece of glass, and it's set in place on 30-degree angles, and in 19 segments of the circle. The technology of building it and designing it was pretty intense. A lot of custom stuff, and it was fun. It was challenging and rewarding in the end.
I can just imagine.
Yeah. Everything had a backup system, It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Pretty serious operation in there.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a good project. We have a few projects. We've got a nice little project we designed in Eastern Passage, a little art gallery that. For an artist there, Art Henneberry. Unfortunately, they were just going into fundraising when COVID hit, so that's kind of put on the back burners. But very colorful individual from Eastern Passage who started painting when he was 65, and his paintings are amazing. Like,
that's inspiring.
Yeah, I was when I saw his paintings, I was like, you have to walk right up to them and realize that they're not a photograph. It's the detail, and they're all ocean driven. He's got one of the Blue Nose, the Titanic. Wow. He's got about 40 or 50 of them.
This is in Dartmouth?
It's an Eastern Passage. It's going to go in right in by their property, the Fisherman's Cove, and that'll be a nice little addition. It's a nice little spot over there.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's interesting. As a small firm, we try to find our, we try to find our identity. What is it we're doing? And I like to be very active in the projects. I don't see myself being a 20-person architectural firm and managing people. I want to be involved.
And so you just have 2 employees, is that correct?
Currently, yeah. I'd like to get to 5. I think that's my goal right now. But
shout out to anyone looking for
yeah. But I like a senior technologist with 15 years experience. Yeah.
Never know who's listening.
That's right. Yeah, but to me, I don't want it to grow in just by numbers. I want it to grow because the person is the right fit.
Right.
It's hard to recruit people right now. It's a different time. It's a completely different time than when I started the business. When I started the business, it was hard to find work, and now it's hard to find good employees, and that's just the luck of the draw. Yeah. But
even if the skill and the competencies there, sometimes the core values, like you said, if the person doesn't fit, or
and it's a tough business when everybody's now recruiting. Like everything's going through recruitment companies, and it's hard to you got to be cautious as an employer to your staff like never before, and provide them. I always tell people don't.
With Kendall, they want to work with it's kind of like you're saying, you have to build a rapport, you have to have a reputation that goes with your business.
No, it's after a while you get. I have great rapport, not just with some of the clients, but in the construction business, I've had people say, you're firm but you're fair. I said that's a very good compliment coming from the construction side to say that you're fair. And people are going to make mistakes, and you got to find solutions. And there's mistakes on everything that I've ever worked on.
It's no perfect job.
No, and if you can see through why someone's coming to you with a problem or what the problem is, and then sort on the solution, you get to get a lot of respect. And when I go to a construction site, I try to talk to people and at least acknowledge them wearing a white hat as a target. I know that, and it's you try to connect with people whenever you can, and make them realize that you're You're just like them. You're here to do a job, and
Yeah.
you can learn a lot too. There's a lot to learn. I tell you, you don't learn everything you need to know in this business in the office.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because that's really one of the biggest motives of this podcast is to try and bring together all the players
Yeah.
in the industry, right from the guys building on site to architects like yourself to
Yeah.
developers.
Yeah.
So many players, and you're right. Like you could never stop learning. There's just so many. Every project has its own challenges, and
in this market, I mean, we've got 25 cranes in the air right now. I mean, 15 years ago, nobody really put cranes up in Halifax. Maybe once every 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole evolution of change. And I mean, I've been in the business a long time, and I never saw any cranes on construction sites very often at all. Now it's become very common.
Yeah.
And the people are seeing the benefit of setting them up. And
technology too on site, like PM software, and it's endless.
I have a friend who runs a former company, and it's he tells me all these things he's done. I don't know anything about putting cranes up.
They're all around us.
It's not my business. It's so there's a lot of stuff. I mean, here we are sitting in front of a barge that's building a. I mean, that's just another whole industry, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot to learn, and I think it's healthy that as architects we go to the site with the idea that these people here, they're here, they're proud, I mean, they want to do a good job. They may not fully understand where you're coming from or read the spec the way you wanted it to be read, but they're all here trying to do their job.
And we do need each other. I mean, it's different mentalities, different ways of looking at things.
It's hard.
Roles.
I do find it hard as an architect to go to a construction site, and it's not in my DNA to set the tone. I hope the tone is like that. It's very let's work together. Yeah. That's my hope. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's my take on it. Is let's work together. We're going to both need each other.
Do you think the industry is more collaborative today than it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think a lot of architects and contractors work in the design build world a lot, and I think that helps the relationships be better and less sort of loggerheads with each other. I think that's a big impact on that. I mean, the fact that the contractor's bidding on a job that you may be design bid build, and then the next time you're working together in design build, and clients need to understand that that may be the case, but I got a job to do here, and we're going to work through this. There's certainly not.
And like you said before, you mentioned earlier, sometimes the strong relationships are a result of having to go through those challenges together and staying with it. And when it could go another way. And you mentioned a certain circumstance that happened years ago with one of your clients and how you became lifelong friends. And just doing the right thing. And again, fair and firm is quite a compliment. I take that, that means that I'm doing my job and I'm doing it the way it should be done, right? Yeah. And I think the other part I think is important is that as architects that I was lucky when I started. Noel Fowler, I worked with him for the first 3 years, and Noel sent me to a project meeting. I was about 3 months out of school, and I had no idea what I was doing. And he cycled me through 3 or 4 projects in a row over the first 3 years of my career, from design right through to construction administration. And I just got to know the business so well during that period of time, and it just gave me a real solid footing. And it makes architects better architects when they know the projects that they're working on from start to finish, as opposed to working in silos where you're the designer, then somebody gets the production, then somebody else does the contract admin. On large-scale projects, you don't get the luxury of having somebody doing all those 3 components. You need teams in each portion, but well, even with larger architecture firms too, you may not get the chance to.
Yeah,
there's so much autonomy.
Yeah, so it's something I swear by, that it makes better architects, and you go through those cycles. You go through design, production, contract admin, and back again. And what you learn in the field comes back to the drawing table, and you learn a lot about the English language over your lifetime when you're producing drawings, and what you thought made sense doesn't make sense to the person who was reading it. So, it's clarity and details. It's so the details can make a lot of differences. As you know, in the construction, it's important. If it should be 42 inches, don't say it's 41.
Yeah. And I think the same thing with contractors and estimators. I remember someone telling me one time, the best estimators are often the guys that had worked on the sites for years, because they're able to just have that inherent intuition. They're looking through drawings of how long. It's not overly difficult to do a square foot, linear foot, analysis of a set of drawings. But whenever what these other details and stuff comes up, that how long it's going to take and how it's going to be done.
Yeah, it's definitely a great learning experience. And I've got a couple of friends that were site supers. My father-in-law was a site superintendent, and we used to talk endlessly. He's a great guy, and I always connect with the site supers. There's something about some of them, I don't know. The fact they must have to be very good personalities to become site supers, and
I think they do.
And they have such a wealth of knowledge. I really like learning from them, and I've been in the business a long time, and I still like learning from them. I think that's a great. It makes the construction part of things really, really good. They usually want to do the job, get in, get out, and they want their company to make money, and they want the job to go well, and it's
often very, very stressful, a lot of pressure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So they have to be that kind of personality that let things. They're not taking things home with them at the end of the day, and but I think it's neat to hear that from an architect with that kind of respect and relationships with site supers, and even foremen for certain subcontractors, whether it's masonry or landscaping or drywall. Like, these guys are running crews of 30 to 50 guys, and then they have to collaborate with all the other trades and organize. And
my father-in-law, his name is George Hatfield, and he was in the construction business for his whole life. And when I would go to a construction site, and if I told them I was his son-in-law, I had instant friends. Like, people would just connect with me. I didn't have to say anything or do anything good or bad. They
just loved him.
Yeah, he had that kind of calming, smart man, cool as a cucumber.
Yeah,
nothing really got him too upset about, and people just rallied around him. And
just a natural leader, probably.
Yeah, he treated people really well, and they felt good around him. He was never threatening to them. He just they do their job, and he makes sure they do their job, and he supports them. He was pretty good. Yeah, no, that was great for me to always sit and chat with him, often. And
there's so many great people like that in the construction industry. They're obviously, like, those positions, like, it's fast paced, and you have to be very intelligent, very organized, like all the logistics. But at the same time, like, these guys on the site that are the blue collar workers, they've got to want to like talking to you as well. So there's a lot those guys, they deserve a lot of respect. Those guys are good at what they do, and often these buildings get built, and some amazing projects, and no one's going to hear outside the industry is going to hear these person's names. But if they're there, the guys know on site.
Yeah, and I think too, though, the tradespeople that work on an amazing building, they're pretty proud.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I know the Green Gables crew over there. There's a lot of people that worked on that job are pretty proud of what they contributed to it. So they all should be pretty proud of their contribution. Yeah.
I do want to touch on one thing.
Okay.
In case we do run out of time at some point, but I think it's really neat. Something that you have in your bio, and just I know something that's really important to you. And so your two daughters, Courtney and Sarah, and your wife Krista.
Yeah.
And I just think it's and we had a conversation earlier about work-life balance, and you were talking about in the architecture field there is sort of that rock star persona that, there's so much going on, and it's endless. And it's easy to get caught up in. And you had heard an interview of someone you respected years ago who said, "Is there what regrets he might have had?" And it was that he didn't spend enough time. And I just, personally, and people I know, it's a tough balance in any industry, and I don't think construction is maybe any different than any other ones. But it is a fast-paced industry, and there's so much going on in Atlantic Canada right now. So I think it's a good topic to hear someone like yourself chat about that work-life balance, how important that is.
So when I started my career, I didn't know where I was going to end up. My family's been here since 1810, and I met my wife and became really good friends with her brothers and family, and my brothers and her brothers, we all got along together really well, and eventually we got married. 4 years later, we built a house in 1996, 5-minute walk from her parents' house and 5-minute drive from mine. And when our kids were born, their grandparents became a pretty important part of their life. And, I tried a couple times to look at moving away just to re-energize my career path. And we knew what we were giving up, even not just my children and my wife, but our extended family. And, it was simple. I don't oversimplify it, but I had no hesitation to know what was important. And, yes, I could have gone to a bigger city, maybe a bigger center, worked on some amazing projects as a team with other people. But, I could tell that I had a great thing in my life, and I wasn't going to compromise it whatsoever for my career. I put my career second, my family first, and that was never a difficult decision for me. I don't have any regrets that I didn't do it. I'd love to go work somewhere else just for the enjoyment and experience of it. We were ironically thinking of going to North Carolina about 20 years ago when my wife was starting in the IT business, because that was a real hotbed for IT, and it had some really good architectural firms there at the time. And the IT business went kind of sour in 2001 after the Y2K, and so we didn't go. But we would have only gone for a few years for the experience for both of us. But no hesitation for me. Work is second.
Yeah. What advice would you give to if there's any young contractors listening, or they're subcontractors or they have their own business, and they're just kind of just overloaded with work, overwhelmed. It makes it tough on the family life and stuff like that. Like, is it just about saying no to projects that you don't need, or overextending yourself, or is it like about having those priorities in order that I got to make this time work for me in this industry especially, and cut it off at 5 o'clock or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's harder in the when the sun shines in the construction business. There's a lot of pressure to do the work because it's going to rain tomorrow and you're not going to have any pay.
You can always have a plan, and it never goes.
It's a lot harder for the construction side than if you're working in an office and the weather is not determining your fate as far as finances go. But I think it's if you've got a life that is pretty important, whether it's your friends or your spouse or your partner, or your parents or whatever it is, work is always going to be there. And there's all kinds of cliches about, you don't reflect back on, I wish I spent more time at work, blah, blah, blah. But, I value what I have and how great it is. And as great as it is to win an award and stuff as an architect, there's nothing like the rewards of having great friends and relationships with your kids. And my 2 daughters come to supper every Monday night at our house because one of the girls commutes, and we have vegan suppers every Monday for them, and hang around. It's just a thing we do now. It's our new ritual. It's a pretty great experience to be a dad and a husband, and I can find another way to make a living.
Oh, that's amazing. So much respect for that, Kendall.
Yeah.
Just in closing, is there anything that you'd like our listeners to know currently, or something in the future regarding root architecture, or anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think we're starting to. I guess we, as in me, I think I'm a late bloomer, and I think that's okay. I mean, everybody is on their own time clock, and a lot of people are talking about retiring, and I'm like, I don't want to retire.
That's why I like your story earlier about the guy who's 65 and decided he'd start painting. And
yeah, it's kind of like
career change.
I don't really aspire to retirement from that perspective. I'm getting off path here now. Maybe regroup on the. I had a thought.
Anything that you wanted to sort of get out to the listeners and the followers about specific to root architecture, anything happening currently, or anything that is coming down the pipe in the future that's exciting. Or
yeah, we were at an interview yesterday for a really exciting project in Lake Bannock. And I think that type of project that combines a real strong technical demand, building a building over top of the lake. How do you do it? How do you build it? What components go into it? Talking to people I know in the construction industry and saying, hey, how would you do this if you were building this? Because that can influence the design too, right? You have respected people, So, and also at the same time, this is an iconic building, and starting with the City of Lakes, and so I think the one thing I really like about kind of my experience, and I believe in my strengths, is the balance between the arts and the science, and the ability to know. I'm very comfortable talking about building envelope, and I'm very comfortable talking about good architecture, and I think I'm very fortunate to work with some really good people and the influence that they've had on me, and that's something that I think people who come work for our office, if they can get me to pull my head away from my computer and spend some time with them, which is always challenging in a small firm, but I think there's a lot that I could teach the youngsters that way, and just sort of share that knowledge. It takes time. You need to experience things on your own too, and passing on your knowledge is a little challenging, I find, sometimes, because you know a lot, and over time, and trying to pass it on to others and communicate it is another new learning experience for me as an employer.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great experience so far. I don't plan on. As long as people want to keep hiring me, I'm going to keep working.
Oh, that's great to hear. Where can people find root architecture online? Website, Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, so we started out 10 years ago, the website, because we didn't have a whole lot of content, and unfortunately I left that go too long, but we are going to launch a new website in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks and focus on our projects that we've done over the years. And I really like, social media has evolved in the last 10 years, and Instagram is kind of where, I'm not I don't subscribe to it daily, but it's a great way to push your stuff, whether it's big or small issues, out into the social media world and send it to where you want it to go.
Right.
That's because it's hard to get people to come to your website. I mean, they can certainly go there, but we're going to, under our media section, we're going to have links to Instagram so that people can also connect back and forth. Because it's too hard as a small firm to keep up with news. I mean, there is news, but when do I have time to publish it? And so as a small firm, we're going to really kind of focus on that social media platform, and it's Instagram seems to be the one of choice. Who knows what's coming up next? But
yeah, there's all kinds. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But certainly they are a great tool for business.
Yeah.
No, it's been great having you, Kendall. I really appreciate your time. You're the second architect that we've had on the show, and we hope to get you back sometime. That's great.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlanta Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.